that's one of the reasons why I started this podcast. Hey, what's going on, my beautiful nieces and nephews around the world? It is your favorite big unk. This is the Akil Patterson Show. I'm so excited that you're going to be joining me here for my very first episode. I have a great guest for you all. His name is D. Watkins. That's Dwight Watkins, but everyone just calls him D because he'll tell you he don't know nobody named D. Dwight. You know, but before we get into that interview, I first want to thank you all. This has been an amazing journey from Baltimore to Berlin. Um, I have I've lived a life that's very full. I will say that I am very, very blessed. I have had a good career, even though D did get me fired from one job working with the Oregon Nurses Association because when we had worked out his contract, I said he was going to buy a pair of shoes, and they said you can't do that. So anyway, I'm just messing with them. But D and I have been old friends for many years, and there's a story that D will. I always got to keep it away from him, but it is a true story. So one night, D and I are we just left the Baltimore City Mayor's Forum. This is back when Catherine Pugh was the mayor of Baltimore. She actually did a little stint in the pokey. She went to prison or jail, prison for several months because she basically anyway, she sold some kids' books to somebody that there were no kids' books anyway. And so when Catherine Pugh was running, D and I had been over at this forum, and we had walked across the street. It was over at MICA, the Maryland Institute of Arts, and we walk across the street. We're walking across the street, and as we walk across the street, there is this car. Now there's a walkway in the state of Maryland. There is a law that if you are a pedestrian and you are in the pathway, like you have to be in it, that you have the right of way. Well, this car keeps driving, and it's like a Prius. And so the guy keeps driving, and I stare down the car. Now, if you've ever walked with me at an intersection, I'm in the street, I will stare down the car. I'm like, I want you to look into my eyes, because if you hit me and I die, I want you, the last thing that you ever see, to be my soul. And I want it to haunt you forever. And so as I'm walking, I stop and I look at this Prius coming at me. The guy doesn't stop. So I take both arms and I'm like, boom, on the hood. Well, D finds it funny the first place, and he's laughing. And so we go over to Mount Vernon Tavern. Is it Mount Vernon Tavern? I can't remember the name of the bar. Mount Royal Bar. Either way. And we end up inside the bar, and I've already like called the police, like, yo, this dude in the Prius. Well, the guy in the Prius says that there was an angry group of black men trying to assault him. Now, let me be very clear. It was me, D, a woman, she'll be on the show at some point, my friend Catalina Bird, who was a journalist and a Republican, and then this white guy who's also a journalist, and another white guy. So there was like two white guys, three black people. None of us knew what this guy, and we were all just dim-witted to know that this guy called the cops on me because he refused to stop at an intersection, and I was wearing a suit. I was a lobbyist. I had nothing to do with any gang, nor did I have a gun. So the guy ends up, I think he got charged for filing a false police report. But D and I that night, we laughed about it. We had a glass of whiskey and we talked. Years later, I had D come to some events for me. We've done a lot of different things. And when you meet somebody in your life, like Dwight Watkins, D. Watkins, you are meeting someone who is genuine. He's unapologetic about who he is. He lives life on life's terms. He works through things. He is not perfect. None of us are perfect. And we've all struggled. And I think that's something that I appreciate about Deeb, is that he sees me for me, the way I see him for him, the way you should see yourself for yourself. There's no fakeness with me anymore. I believe that a lot of people, a lot of men mask themselves around um, having to conform to a certain genre of people, having to be somebody that they're not. David Gockstein, my friend David, David and I have gone back and forth. You've heard us arguing. He's a Republican. I used to be a Democrat. I used to be a Republican too, but now I'm just me. And David gives me a call before I was going to do this show. David gives me a call. He says, "Akil, I want you back. I want you to come back and do a show. You've got what it takes, man. You've got a talent. Just come back." And I said, "David, I don't know if I want to come back." And he's like, "Just think about it." And we struggled on finding the name of this show. I kept saying like, "Oh, we should call it this," and catchy names. And he goes, "Why not just be yourself? Call it the Akil Patterson Show. Be a show about you. You being you. That's who I'm hiring. That's who I want on my network. I want the guy that I know. I don't want these characters." And I said, "David, it's really tough for me. It's really tough for me because I've always been a character. I'm somebody that turns it on, but at home, I don't want to talk to you. At night, I want to be by myself." But that's being authentic in this world. I've got severe ADHD. Some people would say that I've got traits that are on the autism spectrum. I don't know. Growing up, if I was bad, I got an ass whooping. If I talk too much, I got an ass whooping. If I was too much, I got an ass whooping. So I learned, okay, you know, when you're doing something wrong, someone's going to check you. That's not the case. That's not the case. I moved out to Portland, Oregon. If you honk at people, they freak out. But yet they're the ones with Antifa. They've got more right wing neo-Nazi groups than Michigan. I try to go work in cannabis. People, there is a level of liberalism that I will never understand. Too loud, you're too much. You know what I found out? The people that have the bigger tent truly are the more conservative people. Hey man, let him do him. Let him be himself. Go do you. Now, when you say go do you, that's what you think you're going to get. But when you go extreme liberalism or extreme Republican, anytime you're on the extreme of anything, they don't like anyone who claps back. I'm clapping back. I'm clapping back. I'm done playing your games. I want to be me, authentic. And I like wearing a good suit. I do. I do like wearing a good suit. Spend enough money on them, might as well. During COVID, I didn't get to wear a suit. After COVID, I didn't wear a suit. But I do like wearing a good suit. But I also like talking to people, breaking down whatever exists between us to have a full and on depth conversation. And that's what I'm going to do here with this show. That's why I am starting this podcast because I want to have conversations with people, not letters behind names, not insignias on crowns. You see this hat? It says keep America high. That's what it says. Walk down the street and people will flip me off. I'm like, did you read the hat, bro? I'm on your side 90% of the time. 10% of the time, I won't be. But I'm happy to be able to sit here today and be myself, to love you, to love the world, to love my nieces and nephews wherever they are. I was traveling through through Europe. I spent months there. And throughout the course, make sure you're following at Breaking Big on Instagram. That's Breaking Big Unk, UNK, Breaking Big Unk. I'm getting text messages now as we talk. But as I'm traveling, I'm meeting people from all over the world, legitimately. People from Morocco, people from Spain, people from Tanzania. I've got nieces and nephews around the world, legitimately. See, you don't have to be skin folk to be kinfolk. You don't have to be rich or poor to be family to me. What family looks like to me is an intersection of perfection. You get to be yourself with me. You get to be authentic because I'm not here to judge you. I sat in the Sistine Trap when I prayed. I was at the Basilica de Famiana in Barcelona. 150 years, I could feel the decadence in there. But I also felt the Lord's Prayer, and I felt his presence in me. In St. Peter's Square, I prayed because I get to do those things now. You can be anything. Our society puts you in the box. I'm stepping out the box. Be authentic, be yourself, be real, be the American dream, be the dream that you want to see the most. I have been a lobbyist, I have been a scholar, I have been a recreational therapist, I've been a detention center correctional officer. I've worked with young people and old people, people with disabilities. I don't always get it right, but you got to try to be better than you were before. I'm going to talk about crypto because I love crypto. I'm going to talk about exciting things because I love exciting things. But most importantly, I'm going to talk to you, the audience, every day that I'm on because I care about what you take away from me. My expectation is that when you leave, you are a better person you were before. I got a resume. You'll see photos of me with Kiki Palmer and Dave Chappelle. You'll see a photo with me and Jason Collins. God rest his soul. I have lived a good life. I have experienced life. I've sat in rooms with Roger Goodell, Troy Vincent, and I've messed up a lot of opportunities too. I've interviewed Michael Saylor and Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary. I got to do these things because I always am moving somewhere. And now I'm moving here with you guys. I'm excited to bring you whatever little bit of I have, whatever bit of love and attention. And I need your help too. Okay. I'm gonna be real. I need your help too. On this show, on this show, we want to hear from you. So in the comments sections here on G Media, make sure you let me know who I should interview, who I should talk to. If you got a contact, let them know. Hit me up. I'm open to everyone because I don't want to be closed off anymore. Young, old, fat, ugly, mager, non-mager, looks maxing, non-looks maxing. I'm open. I'm open to communication. And yeah, I'm going to get heated sometimes. I'm going to tell you I don't like you, but I'm not your judge. I think what you might be doing is wrong, but I'm not your judge. When you get to them pearly gates and you're sitting there in front of St. Peter, hey, that's when you got to figure it out. Oh, and by the way, there is no prejudice here. Gay, straight, bi, indifferent, doesn't matter to me. Black, white, Asian, Middle Eastern, Pacific Islander, whatever. We don't judge. So join me on this journey. And on our first episode of the Akil Patterson Show, let's take it over now as I interview the writer of We Own This City, the author of The Cook Up, a New York Times best-selling author, D. Watkins, here on the Akil Patterson Show. Let's get to it. What's going on, nieces and nephews around the world? It's Akil Patterson. Thank you for joining me here on this very first episode of the Akil Patterson Show. I'm joined by a good friend, a man who has seen my fun side. I won't say I won't say my big side, but you see my fun side. and he knows I can crush a car with my bare hands. The speaker, writer, and generally just a phenomenal guy, Mr. D. Watkins. And I would say Dwight, but as he once said, I don't know by any fucking name Dwight. What's going on, D? How you been, brother?
I tell your viewers and your listeners to not get on your bad side. That's what I'll say. I'll say don't get on his bad side at all.
I think many people know. I think that's a journey that we all go through in life. Is you always get that one dude who's got a lot of energy for the fight when they need it. But I'm here to talk to you today and go through your journey. I think I had you on one of my previous iterations of my podcast, and you discussed kind of this person who you were when you wrote your first book.
Mhm.
Talking about a gentleman who legitimately had never really read a complete book before he got shot, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I read the kitty books, and I think it's just like it's a big disconnect that I think we as people, we as a country, we're finally, starting to figure out now. But when you're a kid, you love Curious George and the little Dr. Seuss books that rhyme and books like Stone Soup, and it's cool. And when you get to middle school, there's this big cutoff. Everything becomes Mark Twain, and it's funny because like the Put in the Head book and the Prince and the Pauper. Like there's some of like my favorite books looking back now, but you giving me Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn in middle school, and I'm in this black city in this black place with people playing basketball and football and riding dirt bikes and Air Jordans and jewelry, and the representation of literature is uh, uh, uh,
Less than limited.
a black slave named Jim. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Following around
helping
two
white
white
boys.
kids.
So you've got the Cook Up, right?
Uh-huh.
Which was your first book, which was a memoir, and then you've got We Speak for Ourselves. Then you've got Black Boy Smile, and then you ended up working with Carmelo Anthony, NBA superstar, and you helped guide his book along the way. You're a University of Baltimore professor, associate professor now. So what haven't you been able to accomplish, considering you started off, if you have, and I will say this to the audience once again, if you haven't read the Cook Up, you wouldn't realize your entire inheritance was some drugs in a safe, effectively. Like that's where you started, and look where you're at now. So what haven't you been able to accomplish in that amount of time? And what are you accomplishing today?
I, so what haven't I accomplished? So much. There's so many things I want to do. So many things I want to do in young adult literature, and so many things I want to do in television and film. I've been blessed to work in TV a little. I executive produced a film called Hoops, Hopes, and Dreams that came out earlier this year. I'm working on a television show, indie television show called Three Blind Mice, about three young women trying to navigate Baltimore, which is cool. But and HBO had brought me in to work on a couple of different projects that just didn't, we own this city actually. The world has seen that, but there's some other things they bring me in
Yeah.
on that didn't see the light of day. So I want to, I want to make a stronger mark in literature and in television and film.
So you're really good at storytelling. I think that's where your strong point has landed. Do you feel that storytelling today is better than it was when you started to begin your journey as a writer and an author and as a storyteller, just pragmatically?
I think more people recognize their own power to control narrative and tell stories. So it's different, right? Um, there's almost like there's a new form of storytelling that I've yet to master, called micro storytelling. It's a lot of stuff what you see on social and things like that. So I like that people are paying attention, that they're trying to do different things. It's cool. It's cool. It's interesting. I hope our young people, still want to watch films and television shows, but I don't know. Maybe I got to start writing stuff for social, like the little 2-minute TV shows.
You know, when people outside of Baltimore think about you, they are going to just say, "Oh, he's the guy who wrote, was it episode 4 of We Own the City?"
Yeah,
That was
I wrote in every episode, but 3 is
okay.
mine. 3 is
Okay,
mine.
so episode 3 was yours specifically. So, they're like, "Oh yeah, We Own the City," which, We Own the City was a true story in which effectively this drug task force was manipulating, Baltimore drug dealers. They were basically taking their products and saying, give us your stuff, give us your money. You right there. Do you think people outside of Baltimore would what their experience has been with your artistry?
Well, I don't know really. That's a great question. People always they think about Baltimore in a negative way, which is weird. We were just in the New York Times for the declining murder rate and violent
Yes,
crime. So it's like
7 murders in July, which
uh,
unheard of.
unheard of. So the
Unheard of.
city has taken a turn in a positive direction. However, there's still a whole lot of stories that need to be told on both sides. Stories about the good that we're doing, and then stories about the corruption we're still trying to fight. So they both have space. I think a lot of times, and I don't know you feel this. I never really think about what people outside of Baltimore are thinking. You know what I'm saying? I don't really think about it. I don't think about it like that. Because I mean, you've been in the fire. We're in the fire. We're here. We're with people. We're having
Mhm.
conversations. We're building relationships. We're trying things. And I love it here.
So let me ask you this. You talk about you don't really care about what people outside of Baltimore think about Baltimore, but who has traditionally defined Baltimore and the voices that they have included versus the voices have excluded?
It depends on your entry point. If you're an athlete, then some basketball players and football players at Dunbar High School and City and Poly. If you're a true crime person, then you're going everything the wire, everything serial, everything the corner. If you're into politics, then you're thinking about some of the mayors that got national attention,
Mm,
like Sheila Dixon and Catherine Pugh for
yeah.
some of the things that went on during their administration. A lot of people talking about Wes Moore with his Baltimore connection and going on to be governor and all of that. So it's like it depends. And I think like any major American city, especially with a dense urban population. You're gonna see some good, you're gonna see some bad. And if you're looking for the good, it's right in your face. If you're looking for the bad,
Mm,
it's right in your face. So whatever narrative you choose to go with, normally bounces off of the projection of your own reality.
mm. Do you think people can tell the honest story of Baltimore without falling in love with the crime factor? And I'll tell you what I'm thinking in my head, all right? Because we know
Okay.
that I'm sometimes wild. When we when people say, "Oh, The Wire," they ask about all the bad, right? They talk about all the problems that were there, but the towers have been down for 20 years, at this point.
See,
Uh,
even that's flawed. Saying Baltimore is the wire and because it's bad, it's flawed. Because The Wire
mm,
isn't all bad. The Wire had the largest black cast in television at the time when it was out. The Wire has a diverse collection of black people in all
mm,
types of professions, from judge to cop to lawyer to addict to drug dealer to
yeah,
homicidal maniac. Like it's literally so many different things and stories and plots and subplots that to write it off as just the part where we see people getting their heads blown off is flawed. And that's what people do. Like
yeah.
that's what people do. Like, oh my God, the Wire is crazy. And it's like, yeah, some white cops drinking, drinking on the job and not solving homicides. Never saw that before.
Surprise! It's every city in America,
You know?
Yeah, yeah. I think when I think about The Wire, I go, man. I was like, yo, that was the first time I ever saw a gay dude that everybody was scared of. Everybody was scared of the gay dude in the
Well,
in the show The Wire.
well, even a step deeper though. The fact that he was gay, it wasn't a part of his character. It's a fact that he's a black man in a city in this culture who just happens to be gay. So we're not
Exactly.
using his sexuality as a way to check a box, as a way to get people to say and think and feel a certain way. It's just, it's treated as how any human being should be treated. Whatever their desires and their wants is it belongs to them. It shouldn't be sensationalized and like, oh man, we're gonna give him a bright pink coat and some pink cowboy boots. So when he run up on the drug dealers, he's going to shoot him in court. No, he was a complex. He, he was a gay man who was treated like a person and who was given a full storyline, a backstory, a love life, a home
Mhm.
life, and a moral code. And I think um, for progressive thought, that's one of the most progressive and important characters in television history because they didn't make a mockery out of it. He just, you know what I'm saying?
Oh
And
no.
he was the toughest dude and everybody's favorite character. Everybody's favorite character is Omar.
Yeah, no. He was definitely one of the favorite characters of mine, and I thought, man, that's crazy. Now, I'm going to switch it up a little bit here. You know, I want to talk about the recovery, the healing, and the survival of coming from institutional schools a little bit with you. Um,
On the
you
first day
know,
of school.
what was that?
On the first day of school. This is city school's first day. My daughter goes next week because she goes to a Catholic school, but city schools, this is their first day.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So that's a great point. Like, I know a lot of students. Because I didn't go to Baltimore City schools. I will always tell people, I am never from Baltimore. I can never claim that because it's one of the city that stole my heart, adopted me, accepted me, loved me, nurtured me. But I can never say I'm from Baltimore. But from people who are from Baltimore that did go to city schools, how have those institutions, from your perspective, um, impacted people? And you can take me all the way back to Johns Hopkins, and how, that hospital has, I mean, that hospital and university has incorporated over almost what, 35% of the city's land. I
Mhm.
mean, what is it like being a survivor of Baltimore City education and now having to teach in an institution, in institutions, because I say, although you may be at the University of Baltimore, you've taught over at Coppin State, you've got relationships with all these institutions. So what is it like now having to educate those institutions about, hey, y'all get it wrong. You're not supporting students, or you are supporting students, or what they can do to better off help those communities that they are with right now.
So I would never like call myself any type of hero or anything like that, right? I will say when I worked in the Baltimore City, I went to Baltimore City Public Schools. I worked in the Baltimore City Public School System. And then when my book started coming out, I've made thousands of visits and worked with a whole lot of young people. And I think my biggest contribution was showing what a person can grow into if they fully understand and acknowledge what's in front of them. Now, I didn't have
Right.
these skills when I was in school as a student. I was an asshole. The thing that probably saved me the most was the fact that I was always a curious and just inquisitive person. I had a lot of questions and I wasn't afraid to ask them. And when I was able to come back into the school system, the thing that I brought that I think I shared with a lot of teachers was you have to meet these young people where they are. You have to listen to them and you have to take their culture into consideration when you're teaching them. And I'll tell you a quick story of how I figured it out. When I first started teaching in this spot called Friendship Academy, I said, all right, cool. I'm gonna use Jay-Z and Nas in the writing prompts, and we're gonna get these stories out and they're gonna be good. And the kids are like, yo, who the hell is Jay-Z and Nas? You mean Beyonce husband? That old dude he I'm like, yo, y'all don't like Jay. And they was like, yo, he kind of lame. And I'm like, yo, what? It's the greatest rapper ever. And they're like, nah, So in turn, instead of me trying to shut them down because they wasn't feeling where I was coming from, I
Hmm.
said, well, who do you listen to? And they told me. And I was able to, and at the time it was Chicago drill music was really popular, right? And you couldn't
Okay.
get it. It wasn't streaming anywhere. You had to get it from YouTube. And if you go in the comments, you see all the gang wars, what was happening in the comments, right? So I started listening to who they were listening to, and then I started getting them to explain to me why they liked the music, and then I started getting them to write about it. And then when I accepted their music, guess what they said? So tell us about this old guy Jay-Z. Tell us about this guy Nas. Why you like him? Because
Ah,
I accepted them and I learned about them. Then they opened up their hearts and their minds and they wanted to learn more about me. And in the middle, we found, and I went around to every teacher and every principal and every administrator who would listen to me run my mouth, and I said, "Yo, we're doing it wrong," because I thought now my school, the school I was at for most of the time teaching in the school system was it was East Baltimore. It's not down the hill. It was more like in the Canton area, but everybody from like down the hill from where I grew up at went
yeah.
to school. And when I would be there, I would look at the students and I could look at their faces and see their parents. I could see their moms and dads in their faces because I grew up with all of them. So I'm thinking, yo, I'm from the neighborhood. Some people know me from the neighborhood. Everybody's going to accept me. Everybody's going to like me. This is going to be an easy win. And they treated me like a house phone. And until I started, you know, listening to them, then they started listening to me and everything in my classroom. Like students who they wrote off had graduated. I lost one student that I think about often. Um, but but yeah, it worked out.
You touched on a point. You said you were thinking about a student that you lost, and I won't ask you any, prying details because
Oh no,
there
he
was.
was he was public enemy number one. His name was Capone Chase, and he was brilliant. He was a brilliant student. Ended up going down for a murder, and being like this notorious gang leader. But he was so intelligent. Like he had all like the school was too easy for him. And
Mm,
I was like, yo, we got to get him out of here. They didn't get it. They didn't. It wasn't a prompt or an equation or a problem you could put in front of him that he couldn't solve.
boredom. His boredom turned into, I can go do something exciting somewhere else, which was one thing. I'll equate this to the lowest level thing, so people don't get the wrong idea. Remember those the bird scooters and the kids were hacking them, and they could
Hmm.
just I once thought to myself, imagine if we invested in these young people instead of criminalizing their behavior. They're stealing a scooter, but you know what? What if they would have used that intelligence to actually go, hey, let's do some product development. Let's find
So
out how not to make them, hackable.
and I'm so glad you said that. There's a woman named Brittany Young with a program called B360 in Baltimore where she's teaching kids exactly that. She's teaching them
Yeah.
STEM through working on fixing, repairing, taking apart, and putting back together dirt bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's had great success. So even when we talk about the decline in murder rate, it's because of programs like B360. It's because of programs um, like Safe Streets. It's because we have a mayor who rethought the philosophy and language around policing. It's a collection of all of these different people doing all of these different things because we've been having the same conversation about the violence for so long that
Yeah.
people are actually, being active and switching the way they talk about it. And it's been good for the city. It's been
Now,
great.
now you think about the decline and the violence versus the practices. There was a period of time where people talked about, um, they used the crime rate as a political talking point to get elected, not using the solution to maintain power, right? And I think that's what I'm seeing right now is there's a lot of people, like you said, there's all sorts of people, there was an article I read, several months ago where the district attorney was trying to take credit for the declining crime rate and give it to the police officers. And the mayor was like, nah, man, there's a bunch of people involved in it, right? It was like, why the argument over who gets credit as opposed to it just getting done? What would you say to that? Like people arguing over, well, I want credit because, put my
It's
name on the
I, I,
statue.
I think it's small minded and it's selfish. It's small
Mm,
minded and it's selfish. Because nobody does it alone. Like we get there together. And I'm not gonna say that the way people are being prosecuted didn't play a role because it did. But it's the
mm,
combinations of all of these different things and I have a different entry point than a person in politics. I've literally been sitting in these projects drinking a 25 cent, what, 45 cent now, drinking a 45-cent juice sitting in a lawn chair and watching the dude from Safe Streets talk another dude off of blowing another dude head off.
Mm.
I didn't been on Miami Street and watch Uncle T take guns take a gun out of somebody's hand and dispose of it and sit there and pray and love and show love to a person who probably never been prayed over in their life. Like I see it. So it's hard for me to sit here and and again, I'm not taking anything away from the police department. I'm not taking anything away from anybody who's in this mission, but I'm not
Hmm.
so weird, like such a weirdo where I say, oh yeah, because this one person put a cape on, there's no bad. It takes a village of Batmans. It's no
You know,
one bad.
it was funny. Uncle T's got one of my favorite memes right now, where he said, "They say it take a village to raise a child. What if the village? What if the village is retarded?"
Yeah, yeah. What you think it's going to produce? But they made a dance. They made a dance to that. It's like what you think it's going to produce. What you think it's going to produce.
Yo, seeing that was like, and somebody asked me, when I was back west, they said, "Oh, you see this?" I go, "Yeah, that's T." It's like that's just who he is, and
He
it's
don't really
good that students
care.
have someone like that.
He don't, he's learning the appropriate language and what to say and what not to say. And they're learning that you can't throw him on camera. He too raw. He don't move in the circles that we move in academia and politics and like
No,
he don't move in them circles. So that's not even his demographic. And that's part of the reason why he's going to a troubled person. They listen to him. You know what I'm saying? But no, he's a gem, man. Like I said, I witnessed this man stop somebody from being murdered. And
mhm.
it's nothing like what we talking about. We celebrating the murder rate. We got to celebrate. We got to celebrate that.
No, let's celebrate him. So I want to get back. I want to get to your writings. I want to get to that. There's a part in your book, Black Boys Smile. You examine trauma and joy and expectations placed on Black boys. What did you learn uh, from writing that, and what did you learn to hide in order to stay strong? And I'll give you some segue. I read it during a very difficult time in my life where I'm like, you know, there's a period where I conformed, right? I won't say I conformed. Let's just not even pretend like that. I mask very well, right? I can mask very well, and I think a lot of us mask very well because we're trying to survive in a system that ultimately will look at our bodies and be like, whatever. We can get shot for almost anything. You can be incarcerated. You can be pulled over. What did you learn about appearing to be strong, and how have you softened your strength to show more strength? Because you are a father. You no longer get to be this like, yeah, I'm gonna go out here and just sit on the corner and have a huggy. Sit on one of these 25 stoops and just watch and play ball all day. It's like now I'm going to ballet recitals and
Bid
like little girl
recitals.
gonna get me twirling around in her tutu.
I bid those recitals. Before I wrote the book, I learned that everyone's strong and everyone's weak in their own ways, and it's okay. Um, Social media, the internet, and how we consume information now will lead you to think that everyone's an expert with money, everyone's an expert with meal prep, everyone's an expert in business, and the only person who's failing is you. And that's not true, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I heard that we all have our ups and our downs, and we're on the journey. Writing the book, I learned the biggest takeaway from working on that book. I learned that grief, healing, and becoming the person you want to be, it's not a destination. It's life work, and it's okay. It's life work because everything I thought was right as far as who I wanted to be as a person 3, 4 years ago is not how I feel right now. I'm on a whole completely different wavelength, and it's okay. Every day I wake up, and I try my best. I try to do everything I'm supposed to do. I try to make sure looking out for people whenever I can. I try to make sure when people say things that offend me or hurt me, I try to make sure it's not an ego thing. Even is it an ego thing or am I really hurt? And I think about these things and I digest them. And sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong, and I give myself grace with that as well.
I think you will bring the world together in a much different way. You've got again, you've worked with Hollywood types, and you're working with private entities, and I, moving through. Because again, I don't want to sound like you're just moving through the hood all the time. I mean, like you've been on yachts too.
I've been in some rooms.
Yeah, like you're in some rooms with some high power corporate executives. How are you able to do this knowing that you still got to go back to those communities?
You
How
know,
are you?
I don't think about it as much. I think I mean, even like meeting a person like you, right?
Mhm,
I've learned that you just be yourself. You just have fun. You just exist.
mhm.
And if people don't accept it, and mind you, I'm not the wildest guy. I don't just
No.
yell, I don't yell crazy things, at the top of my lungs. Um, but I'll call you on some BS if you're, saying something negative or derogatory about the people who I care about and love, or about people who can't defend themselves, for sure.
Mm,
But I just exist. And I had to learn that too, because I tried to conform too. When I my first so my first the first book I wrote was the Cook Up, but the first book that came out was the B side. The B side came
mm,
out first, and I never forget the PR person at the imprint that published that book. He was like, "Yo, I'm this close to getting you on Terry Gross, but if I get you on there, you have to, Fresh Prince it." And I said, "What that mean?" And he said, "You have that heavy Baltimore accent. We need you to slow it down and be a little more like Carlton Banks. And I don't want you to think I'm saying that in an offensive way, right?
that is
I don't want
offensive.
you to be offended. I just think you're very brilliant, and I need your message to resonate, and we need to sell some books." And I was like, I don't know how I can not be offended. You telling me to be something I'm not, but I want to sell books, and I want to go around the world, and I want to have these conversations too. So I'm gonna try to play ball. And I went on Fresh Air, and and Terry Gross is one of the greatest interviewers ever, but I kind of felt like we spoke more about running a dope strip than about some of the issues on food insecurities and food deserts and technology and the digital divide and some of the things I thought I wanted to talk about. I felt like we kept going back to the streets, back to the streets,
Mm,
back to the street. But I tried my best to do Carlton. I had a speaking event in Boston like 3 days later after the interview aired, and I'm walking down the street, and this is like the first time I ever been recognized, like, for my work and what I do, right? And the dude was like, "Yo, I looked you up after I heard you on Fresh." He like, "Yo, you was on Fresh Air, my nigga." Like, and I'm like, that's a sentence I've never heard before, and I haven't heard since, right? And he was like, I was like, why I fuck with you? And I was like, "Yeah, I'm glad you listen, bro." He was like, "Yo, because you don't code switch it, none of that phony ass shit." And in my mind, I'm like, "Damn, I did code switch, and I'm not even good at it." I'm not even good at it. So why do it? And it, and it worked out. It worked out.
D, I gotta say, you always make me laugh no matter what. He's like, "Hey, I tried to code switch and I realized I wasn't good at it."
I tried, bro. Like I thought I did Carlton. You know what I'm saying? But
Thought you was da, 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 da,
yeah,
da.
man,
He's like, I missed it.
I ain't been back on Terry Gross since, man. I need to get back on Terry Gross.
He's like, yo, Terry, I was terrible at code switching.
But the world is different. I mean, but the world is different now. It's like back then, Fresh Air used to be the cheat code for selling books. Now it's TikTok. So it's like the world, it just
Yeah.
evolves. Like it goes crazy. Like, have you seen the new book that went crazy on TikTok? And I'm like, I don't even got a TikTok. I have it, but I don't know how to open it or access it. Like, or what books go crazy. So it's a different world, man.
Well, I tell you one thing, you've got the cheat code for anything you need. A cheat code where if you guys aren't familiar with Devin Allen's work, he is a visual artist, and I guess he's like now beyond visual art. But you've worked with him. Tell me about your little brother. Like how
He's the, I
that.
mean, he's from another planet. It's so funny, just the relationship we have and how he processes information is it humbles me so much. You know what I'm saying? Because
Hmm.
I think certain things through, and Devin is just he just pours from the heart. And sometimes that puts him on the biggest stages in the world, and sometimes it leads to the kind of some craziness. But I love it because he's authentic, he's raw, he's the best at what he does. What he does with a camera, the images he creates, and just what goes through his mind it's beyond fascinating. Super
Yeah,
proud.
because he's got two iconic light Time magazine covers.
Yeah,
Um, the first was the uprising in 2015 in Baltimore, and then the second one was thanks to me. I'm just going to say that now
you gotta
because
throw that
I'll
out
never.
there. You gotta throw that out
I
there. You gotta
I
throw it out
never
for
I
sure.
never I listen. It was a trans liberation march, and the trans girls were going to walk in a circle. I was like, nah, take to the street and do a die-in and affect commerce.
Uh-huh.
And then he took the photo, and I was like, yo, that was a dope photo.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah. It's he's
So
it's as we're living amongst some cool people that are doing like some revolutionary things. That photo is going to come up in an important conversation like 100 years from now, and it's going to be
yeah.
like how we look at Gordon Parks photos now. Like we see the Ali joints, and
Hmm.
we see the Ella Daniels joints, the American Gothic. Like if we look at them photos and they just tell stories, we're gonna look at that photo and be like, man, we lived through that moment. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and it's crazy to think that moment was almost it was 11, 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and now we're in a totally different moment now in our world. So D, I want to kind of wrap up with a few questions for you, coming
Sure.
at you fast, closing questions, and so what are you protecting? I'm sorry. What are you protecting in your life now? What are the things that you hold dear now? Not the streets, not the women, not the drugs, not the ripping and running. Not what are the things that you hold dear in your life most now?
Family time. I have to protect family time, man. We have to, the three of us, we have to connect as a unit. We have to have that time together. It's extremely important for all three of us.
Mm. Okay, where does joy show up most for you today? Where?
When the people around me, when they fight and advocate for themselves, when I see my wife, my daughter, little homies, when I see them fight for themselves and what they deserve, it makes me feel like it gives me hope. It makes me super optimistic. Like I just love when people advocate for themselves.
Hmm.
I want to.
What?
I want more fries. You put that extra large box. It had
Don't.
falling out the top. You mine barely coming. No, I want fight. I love that. I love that.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, the only person that's going to fight for you is you.
Fact.
That's what I've learned in our society right now. The only person that's gonna fight for you is you, and that
Fact.
means if you don't have the words, so like if you need an attorney, you better go find somebody that will be your attorney and fight with your attorney because that attorney is advocating for you, right? They got the skills. Now they need you to use your words to help them. What lesson would you want someone to send to a brother who is struggling silently right now?
I would say stick around, and just live through it. Just live through it, even if it's hard. Even if you're contemplating suicide. Even if you're thinking about hurting another person, you shouldn't. But I would say, just stick it out. Just live a little longer. There's plenty of times with me and a lot of my close friends, we wanted to end it plenty of time. My best friend did close to 17 years in jail for nonviolent drug crimes. You know how many times he wanted to press that button, but he didn't. And he's with his family, and he's out in the world, and he's thankful, and he's just stick it out. Even when it seems impossible, just give it a little more time, and I promise it'll get better. Now you have to do some things to make it better, but it gets better.
Finish this sentence, all right? Finish this sentence for me. Baltimore is
Alpha, Omega, best city on the planet. And at the end of the day, we're not interested in anybody's opinion on how great or bad our city is. You can come, you can spend some money, you can eat some food, um, but it's the best, and it's no debate.
ladies and gentlemen, my friend D. Watkins, because we don't know no name Dwight. Thanks for joining me here on the Akil Patterson Show, D. And for everybody at home, look, before you think of anything in life, some of these subjects are personal. And if there's anything that you don't want to discuss and you never want to tell people, guess what? Too bad. You got to find somebody to discuss it with them. I'm Akil Patterson. This is the Akil Patterson Show. Thanks for joining me. And remember, love always wins, even when white women call you by outside your name.
Who could I become if I did?